Welcome to Road of Echoes, Episode 10, The Standing Rock of Yellow Creek. Part 2, The Stone Remembers. We return now to Jefferson County, to the Yellow Creek Valley, a place shaped by water, guarded by story, and remembered by those who walked here long before the surveyors came. This land carries an indigenous heritage older than any deed or boundary line. The water remembers their footsteps, the stone remembers their voices, and the valley still holds the echoes of the keepers, the ones who watched, listened, and preserved what mattered. Let's begin. Long before Section 34, Township 8, Range 2. Long before the Gunter's Chain. Long before the name Jefferson County existed in any language spoken in this valley. There were people here who understood this rock and this water in a way that does not fit neatly into a survey ledger. The peoples of the Algonquin language family, among them the Lenape, known also as the Delaware, occupied and traveled through the Ohio country for centuries before European contact. Their understanding of the natural world was not the understanding of resource and boundary, it was the understanding of relation. For the Lenape and related Algonquin-speaking peoples, the creator, Kishelamakunk, was not a being separate from creation. The creator was present in creation itself, in the rivers, in the stone, in the specific weight of a particular morning's light on a particular surface of water. Every rock carried a story. Every river held a spirit. This was not metaphor. It was cosmology. A complete and internally consistent account of how the world works and what a human being owes to the other beings who share it. Running water in Algonquin spiritual tradition was understood as a liminal space, a boundary between worlds, a place where the visible and the invisible drew close to one another. Rivers and creeks were not simply routes of travel or sources of drinking water. Though they were certainly those things, they were thresholds, and large rocks standing in or near running water, rocks that seemed to have been placed there by intention or by the deliberate force of the world's formation, were frequently understood as markers of that threshold, presences, witnesses to what passed between worlds. The Shawnee people occupied much of what is now Ohio prior to and during the period of European contact. They maintained villages and extensive networks of travel along the creek and river corridors of the region, and Yellow Creek's confluence with the Ohio River made it a waypoint of genuine geographic importance. The Ohio River was the Great Highway. Yellow Creek was an entrance, a door from the hills to the river. The Shawnee understood water not as a commodity, but as a living entity, a being deserving of respect and reciprocity. To draw from a river without acknowledgement was to take without asking. The river noticed, the river remembered. There is a legend documented in the local Yellow Creek oral and written tradition, collected in part by a mid-20th century regional chronicler, that the standing rock was called Stigwanish by the Indian peoples of the valley. The name carries the weight of place naming that belongs to landscapes intimately known over centuries. The rock was understood as a gathering place, a meeting ground, a site where the spiritual and the practical converged, where chiefs and medicine men came to speak, where agreements were made under the eyes of something older than any of them. This mammoth boulder, because of its location among many other spots in the valley, was an important meeting place for the Indians. Tales of Yellow Creek, local historical record, Sikarir 1947. There is one story, half history, half legend, that has lingered in the Yellow Creek Valley longer than any written record. It speaks of a time when the peoples of the Algonquin language family held this land, and when warriors of the Cherokee, moving north along ancient trails, entered the Ohio country in search of new hunting grounds. The two nations met in this valley, and according to the oldest local accounts, they met at the rock. The story says the rock was a boundary, a marker of who belonged to this water and who did not. The Algonquin warriors stood on the eastern bank. The Cherokee approached from the west. Neither side crossed the creek. Neither side touched the stone. They waited, each believing the rock itself held the spirit of the water guardian, and that whichever side stepped toward it first would awaken something they could not control. Some versions say the battle never happened, that the warriors saw something rise from the water, a shape, a shadow, a presence, and both sides fled the valley rather than face it. Other versions say the battle did happen, and that the creek ran red beneath the rock, staining it in ways that only the oldest families of the valley still speak of. None of these accounts appear in formal tribal histories. They survive only in the oral tradition of Yellow Creek, a mixture of memory, fear, and the human need to explain why certain places feel charged with something older than ourselves. Whether the battle happened or not, the story reveals something true. Standing Rock was never just a landmark. It was a threshold, a place where nations paused, a place where spirits were believed to watch, a place where the living world and the unseen world drew close enough to touch. The water guardian, a powerful spiritual being associated with rivers, deep pools, and large stones standing in flowing water, is a figure that appears across multiple indigenous traditions throughout the Ohio Valley and the broader eastern woodlands. In Cherokee cosmology, this being took the form of the Uktina, a great horned serpent of immense power dwelling in the depths of rivers and beneath standing rocks, capable of both destruction and healing depending on whether it was approached with respect or with arrogance. The Cherokee homeland was further south in the Carolinas, Tennessee, and Georgia. But trade routes and centuries of cultural exchange meant that these stories traveled. Ohio Valley peoples were in conversation with Cherokee, Creek, and other southeastern nations across long stretches of time and distance. Stories moved with people, as they always have. What is striking is not the specific form the water guardian takes in any single tradition, serpent, fish, great turtle, shadow creature, but the consistency of the underlying idea across traditions that developed independently across vast geographic distances. Large standing rocks near rivers are dwelling places of power. They are not neutral landscape features. They require attention. They require acknowledgement. They sit at the intersection of the human world and something older, deeper, and less predictable. To ignore them is not to make them go away. It is only to go away ignorant. For thousands of years, the peoples who came to this bend of Yellow Creek to fish, to trade, to gather, to counsel, came to a rock that they understood as inhabited. Not inhabited by a person, not inhabited in any simple way, but inhabited by a kind of attention that the rock had absorbed from the water, from the valley, from the 10,000 years of living that had transpired in its presence. To an indigenous eye, a standing stone in flowing water was never just geology. It was a presence, a witness, a marker between the human world and the world that does not have a name in any human language. Euro-American settlement of Jefferson County began in earnest in the 1790s and accelerated through the first decades of the 19th century. Steubenville, on the Ohio River, was established as the county seat and became one of the principal entry points for settlers pushing west and south from Pennsylvania and Virginia into the new Ohio Territory. Yellow Creek's corridor was among the first inland routes to be settled. The creek valley offered relatively flat bottomland for cultivation, timber for building, and water for power and drinking. Within a generation of statehood, Knox Township was agricultural country, farms claiming the bottomland, woodlots retreating to the steeper slopes, and the creek itself serving as both boundary marker and working resource. The legal mechanism that made all of this possible was the Public Land Survey System, a grid imposed on the American landscape by the Land Ordinance of 1785, which established the standard framework of townships, ranges, and sections that would organize the disposal of federal land across the entire Northwest Territory and beyond. Ohio was one of the first states to be surveyed under this system, and the resulting grid, 6-mile square townships divided into 36 numbered sections of 640 acres each, still underlies every property deed in Jefferson County. Section 34, Township 8, Range 2. These are not merely abstract coordinates. They represent an act of profound geographical imagination and profound geographical imposition. The grid made no exceptions for creek bends, ridge lines, or rocks. The land was measured, the land was assigned, the land was sold. But the surveyors who walked these lines through the early Ohio wilderness could not, in practice, ignore the landscape entirely. When their measured chains ran into terrain too rugged, too wet, or too ambiguous to pin to a simple coordinate, they turned to what the land itself offered: witness trees, creek confluences, prominent rocks. These natural features became, briefly, provisionally, legal objects. A large rock in Big Yellow Creek, recorded in the deed for Section 34, Township 8, Range 2, was the land's own signature on the contract of its transfer. The surveyors did not name the rock Stigwanish. They may not have known that any name existed for it at all, but they saw it. They could not have missed it. And they wrote it down. For the farming families of Knox Township in the 19th and early 20th centuries, the Standing Rock was simply a landmark, the kind of feature that orients a community to itself. Property descriptions ran to it or from it. Thence downstream to the large rock in Yellow Creek, thence north by northeast to the old walnut tree at the fence line. Roads were described in relation to it. Children knew it. Neighbors directed strangers by it. It was, in the vocabulary of rural life, a fixture, as reliable and permanent as the ridge above and the creek below. The farm that has occupied the land around the rock for generations, known historically as Standing Rock Farm, bears its name to this day, a surviving artifact of the rock's community centrality long after formal survey notation has made it obsolete. Local newspapers of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Steubenville area papers that covered Jefferson County, recorded Yellow Creek primarily in two registers: floods and land transfers. Yellow Creek flooded regularly in this era, its hydrology already altered by the first wave of upland clearing and, by the 1880s and 1890s, by the beginning of coal and clay extraction in the watershed. Flood reports describe water out of bank in the Yellow Creek bottoms, crops lost, roads washed, and bridge timber carried downstream. In the land transfer notices, the weekly columns of farm sales and deed recordings, the Standing Rock appears as a perpetual witness, always there, always useful, always the same, even as the human transactions that mention it change hands decade after decade. By the turn of the 20th century, the Yellow Creek watershed was feeling the full weight of the industrial era. Coal seams in the surrounding hills attracted mining operations that altered surface drainage patterns and introduced acid mine drainage into the watershed's tributaries, clay extraction for the region's ceramics industry. Jefferson County was a significant producer of pottery and tile, disturbed additional upland areas. Riparian vegetation was cleared for pasture right to the creek's edge. Without the roots and canopy of the creekside forest to slow runoff and hold bank soils in place, sedimentation increased dramatically. Yellow Creek began to carry more sediment and less oxygen. The creek was still there. The rock was still there. But the living world around them was changing in ways that would take a century to fully reckon with. The Lantern Man of Yellow Creek. Settlers in the mid-1800s reported seeing a lone lantern moving along the creek bank at night, always near the bend where Standing Rock sits. The lantern moved steadily, never wavering, never stopping, and never revealing the person carrying it. When approached, the light drifted toward the rock, paused at its base, then vanished as though stepping into the stone. Local belief held that it was the spirit of a surveyor who drowned during a sudden spring flood while marking boundary lines. Families spoke of a lantern that moved along the creek at night, a steady glow that paused at the rock, then disappeared as though the stone had opened to receive it. The Crying Woman of Knox Township. Settlers described hearing a woman crying near the creek after dusk, not screaming, but a low, mournful wail that echoed strangely off the valley walls. Multiple accounts said the sound came from the creek bend the base of Standing Rock or the shallow pool just downstream. Local lore claims she was the spirit of a young woman who drowned while crossing the creek during a flood to reach her family's cabin. Old families in Knox Township told of a woman's cry drifting through the valley, a sound that rose from the water and carried along the rock face long after the living had gone inside. The echo that answers. Settlers noticed that when they shouted near Standing Rock, the echo sometimes returned with an extra syllable, a faint second voice layered beneath their own. This phenomenon was reported in Hunting Journal's early township letters and one 1880s newspaper anecdote. Some believed it was the voice of the valley itself. Others believed it was the spirit of the rock. Hunters wrote that the rock answered them, an echo with a second voice beneath their own, as though the valley wished to speak back. Thank you for watching The Standing Rock of Yellow Creek. Part 2, The Stone Remembers. Part 3, The True Water Guardian, is available in the Road of Echoes profile. If you're watching on YouTube or TikTok, please like, subscribe, follow, and share. Your support keeps Road of Echoes moving forward.